If you hear background noise in this video, it's because I have my windows open. It's beautiful here in Tennessee, but we have cicadas and they are very loud. But y'all, this was the best squash casserole that I have ever made, and we're just gonna jump right into this recipe. You will need to cut up 3 large yellow squash, or as we say in the South, just a mess of squash. But you will need 5 cups of squash. And just go ahead and put those in a pan and put about 3 inches of water on them and turn your stovetop iron to medium. I diced half of a yellow onion, that's a Vidalia onion, and I put it in a measuring cup, and I'm going to put 3 pats of butter in there, and this amounted to about 3 tablespoons of butter. And then we're just going to put this in the microwave for 1 minute. This makes this process so much easier. It will melt the butter and soften your onions. I have an 8-ounce block of cheddar cheese that I'm grating, and we are only going to use 1 cup of this cheese in this recipe. While our squash is still boiling, we're going to go ahead and throw this recipe together. Add those onions and butter to your cheese, and now we are going to add 1 egg. I am using Duke's mayonnaise, but it does not matter what kind of mayonnaise you use. I just like Duke's mayonnaise. And we are going to add a 1/2 cup to the mixture and just go ahead and give it a stir. Add 1 4-ounce can of green chilies. And these green chilies made this recipe so wonderful. You will want to drain those green chilies, and we're just going to add that to the mix and give it a stir. Let's check on that squash that's been boiling. It's been boiling for about 15 minutes. And we are going to drain all the liquid off of that squash. And this is key. You really want to make sure you get all the liquid off. I like to let this sit for maybe about 10 minutes and let that liquid drain out. At this point, you can preheat your oven to 350 degrees. Once you're certain that all the liquid is off your squash, go ahead and add it to the mixture. We are going to fold this squash into the mixture, because if you stir it too vigorously, then it is going to turn to mush. Unless you like your squash casserole like that, to each his own. But I personally do not like it mushy, and it makes for a much more pleasant looking casserole. I have got an 8x11 baking dish, but you could always double this recipe and use a 9x13. We will need to oil the baking dish, and I'm just using extra virgin olive oil and a paper towel. And then we are just going to pour that mixture right into that 8x11, making sure to spread it out evenly. At this point, this is a very low carb recipe. You do not have to top it with anything. You could put cheese on it if you wanted to, but what I'm using is my homemade breadcrumbs. I'm using about a 1/2 cup, and these are whole grain breadcrumbs, and I just feel like it adds a little texture to it, and you are getting some fiber in your diet as well. If you're curious as how to make homemade breadcrumbs, I've got a few videos on that, so make sure to check those out in my archives. And by the way, these breadcrumbs are unseasoned breadcrumbs. Our squash casserole is ready for the oven, and we are going to bake this for 35 to 40 minutes. And voila, 35 to 40 minutes later, depending on your oven, the casserole's done. And you'll know it's done because it'll be bubbling around the edges. I wasn't sure how the green chilies would taste in the squash casserole. I was just experimenting. But guys, this was so good. You've got to give it a try.